Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Tika Carr. And Tika has a follow-up question to recent vlogs on the subject of probabilities or timelines. And her question is, could there be timelines where important religious icons never existed? And I would extrapolate from this that she means where important social movements might not also have existed, where important events from history did not take place or took place differently. And the answer to this is yes. To my understanding, the timelines run a gamut unimaginably vast, and there certainly are other timelines in which things are drastically different. I'm sure there's a timeline, for example, where Cleopatra won at Actium. I'm sure there's a timeline where Constantine did not choose Christianity. I'm sure there is a timeline where Europe never found their way to North America or where it occurred differently. And I'm sure there's a timeline where the Neanderthals came out on top of their encounter with early modern humans. I'm sure that all of these different timelines undoubtedly can and probably do exist. However, when it comes to moving from one timeline to another, most people's experience is that they move among those that are very similar to the one they're starting from. And I think this has to do with our ability to understand and to maintain our own identity and integrity in making these changes as we make them. I think if you change too greatly in your timelines and you're not extraordinarily grounded and conscious in what you're doing, you can really unravel yourself. It can have very negative effects. That's one of the reasons I say that these are some of the deeper areas of magic and magical practice, and these are things that you really do need to have some care in doing, particularly in respect to grounding and being clear in who and what you are and where you are regardless of your timeline. And the understanding that timelines are actually fluid, that we actually do move between them on a regular basis, I think does help once you understand it. But even so, moving from one timeline to another can be a bit of a jarring experience, and how much more so if you move to a drastically different timeline. Is it possible? I believe it is. Have I done it? No, I have not. I think that it would be too jarring an experience. Do people occasionally see into them without necessarily crossing into them? That's an entirely different question. I think people do. And I think they sometimes misunderstand that experience. But I do think that it happens. Could you make that cross if you wanted to? Well, of course you could, but I would say you'd have to be extraordinarily cautious and extraordinarily clear, again, on who you are and on your own grounding in yourself, because everything around you would be different. Many years ago, there was a science fiction program called Sliders, which was about this very subject, although they approached it in the realm of science fiction rather than spirituality. And every week they would be in a different timeline, and some of them were drastically different. One of the things the show didn't actually portray, in my opinion, is the effect this would have had on the people making the change, although they were doing it as a group, which might have made a difference. But for an individual going into a drastically different timeline, I would think it could be very difficult to maintain your sense of self. And the other thing that's so vitally important to maintain when you start working with these existential issues is your sense that A leads to B. Because sometimes in the deeper realms of metaphysics, A can lead all kinds of interesting places and not necessarily to where you thought B was. And so you have to be very clear on what your center is if you're going to be messing with other centers. Again, it can be done. It's something to be done very cautiously. And are there other timelines that are drastically different and where important religious and social events never took place and therefore other situations obtain? Well, yes, I'm sure there are. Now, Tika makes the interesting argument that she thinks this is a good argument for being tolerant of other movements, and I certainly would agree with that. But in terms of actually trying to cross between those timelines, I think it would be very disconcerting for most people. So those would be my thoughts on the subject. I hope you find them interesting, and until next time, may you blessed be. Pray for peace. Pray for love. Pray for stability. Pray for the nation where you live. Pray for the world. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you for Pagans Tonight Radio. Pagans Tonight Radio is an online radio network with different hosts and different shows 7 nights a week. There's something for every taste, including Spanish language programming on Saturday evening. Check out paganstonight.com today.